My name's Mike, and I'm sitting here questioning everything I thought I knew about my life. I've been married to my wife, Rachel, for 10 years. 10 years of shared laughs, arguments over what to watch on Netflix, and plans for a future that now feels like a cruel joke. Rachel's the kind of woman who can light up a room or set it on fire depending on her mood. She's smart, charismatic, and yeah, she can be a little bitchy sometimes, but I always figured that was part of her charm. I loved her for it, or maybe despite it. Either way, I thought we were solid. But lately, things have been weird. You know how they say people don't change overnight? Rachel did. She started staying up late on her laptop, claiming she was doing freelance work. Except when I peeked over her shoulder one night, she slammed it shut so fast I thought she might have broken the hinge. Then she started going out for walks at odd hours, wearing makeup and perfume. Who the hell puts on perfume for a walk? At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being ridiculous. We were just in a rough patch, right? Every couple has those. But then I met Kevin, our new neighbor. He moved in 2 months ago. Single guy, mid-30s, decent looking in a charming handyman sort of way. At first, I liked him. He helped me fix my lawnmower, offered me a beer, and even invited us over for a barbecue. Rachel was overly enthusiastic about Kevin. She laughed too hard at his jokes, offered to help him unpack, and once, I caught her touching his arm in a way that made my stomach churn. "You're imagining things," I told myself. "She's just being friendly." But the signs kept piling up. And then there was the sock. One night, Rachel came home late. She said she was at the gym, but she wasn't wearing gym clothes, and she definitely didn't smell like sweat. The next morning, while folding laundry, I found a sock in her bag. It wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. It was Kevin's. His name was embroidered on the damn thing. Still, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. Not yet. Instead, I decided to play detective. Little did I know, I was about to uncover something that would flip my world upside down. After finding Kevin's sock, my mind went into overdrive. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Kevin lent it to her for some bizarre reason. Maybe she accidentally picked it up while helping him unpack. Stupid rationalizations, I know, but it's amazing the mental gymnastics you'll do to avoid facing the truth. That night, Rachel was in the shower, her phone on the nightstand. Normally, she guarded it like it held state secrets, but this time she left it unlocked. I don't know what came over me. I'm not the snooping type, but my gut was screaming at me to check. So I did. Her texts were clean. Almost too clean. Then I saw an app one didn't recognize, Whisper. It's some anonymous messaging app. My hands were shaking as I opened it, and there it was, the proof I'd been dreading. Messages from someone named Fix-It Guy. Fix-It Guy. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was fire. Rachel, you're addictive. Winky face. When's the next toolbox talk? I thought I was gonna throw up. Toolbox talk? Really? Could she be more obvious? I scrolled through their chats, my stomach churning. They'd been meeting up for weeks. Coffee dates, walks at the park, and apparently late-night rendezvous at his place. Then I found a photo she sent him. A selfie of her in a dress I'd never seen before, one that hugged her in all the right places. She looked radiant, beautiful, but she didn't dress like that for me. At this point, I should have confronted her, right? Wrong. Instead, I decided to get more evidence. I needed to catch her in the act. Something undeniable. The next day, I told Rachel I had to work late. Truth was, I parked my car around the corner from Kevin's house and waited. Hours passed, and I felt like an idiot. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was losing it. Then, just after 9 p.m., I saw her. Rachel, my wife, walking up Kevin's driveway, looking around like she was in a spy movie. She knocked, and he opened the door, pulling her inside with a grin I wanted to punch off his face. But that wasn't the worst part. Not yet. While I sat there, fuming and debating whether to storm the house, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. Rachel, love you. Hope work's not too stressful. See you when you get home. Red heart. The audacity. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I drove home, barely able to see through the tears clouding my vision. Felt like my chest had been hollowed out. But the worst was still to come. After the driveway debacle, I knew I couldn't stay silent much longer. But I wasn't going to walk into this blind. I needed more. Something irrefutable that even Rachel couldn't weasel her way out of. I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole was about to go. The next day, I called in sick to work and went full spy mode. First stop, a friend of mine, Tony, who works in home security. I told him I needed a hidden camera for a project, and he didn't ask questions. I installed it in our living room, hidden in a potted plant. Rachel often hung out there with her laptop when she wasn't running errands. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to Kevin's house. I knocked on his door, my heart pounding. When he opened it, he looked surprised, maybe even nervous. "Mike."
Man.
"What's up?" I played it cool. "Hey, Kevin. I was wondering if you've seen Rachel around. She's been out a lot lately, and I thought maybe she mentioned something about helping you with, I don't know, unpacking." Kevin hesitated. His eyes darted around like he was looking for an escape route. No, not lately. I mean, she helped out when I first moved in, but not recently." Liar. But here's the kicker. While he was rambling, I noticed something behind him. A familiar scarf draped over a chair. Rachel's scarf. The one I bought her for our anniversary last year. I left without saying anything else, but the image of that scarf burned in my mind. Later that evening, the hidden camera paid off. Rachel was on her laptop, typing furiously. When she got up to grab a drink, I checked the live feed from the camera on my phone. She was on Whisper again. But this time, the messages weren't just with "Fix-It Guy." There was another guy. "Mr. Mysterious. Can't wait for our weekend getaway. Is your husband suspicious?" Rachel. "Nah, he's clueless. I've got him wrapped around my finger. Can't wait to see you, babe." Smiling face with hearts. A weekend getaway? Who the hell was this guy? I didn't have time to process it, because that's when Rachel's phone started ringing. She answered, and I caught her end of the conversation. "Hey, Kev. Yeah, I'll be over in an hour. He's working late again. I'll bring the wine." I froze. 2 affairs? My wife wasn't just cheating. She was running a full-blown operation. But here's where it gets crazy. Before Rachel could leave for Kevin's, there was a knock at the door. She opened it, and there stood Kevin, looking panicked. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "What are you doing here?" Rachel hissed, glancing nervously toward the street. "You're going to ruin everything." "Ruin what exactly?" Couldn't resist. I walked out from the hallway where I'd been eavesdropping. "Yeah, Kev. What exactly is she worried about you ruining?" You should have seen their faces. Kevin's jaw dropped, and Rachel looked like a deer caught in headlights. But then, instead of stammering an excuse, Rachel did something I didn't expect. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh, but a full-blown, maniacal cackle. "Well, looks like the cat's out of the bag," she said, crossing her arms. "What the hell is going on, Rachel?" I demanded. Kevin spoke up, his voice shaky. "Mike, man, I didn't know she was married at first, I swear. She told me you two were separated." "Oh, don't act innocent," Rachel snapped, rolling her eyes. "You were fine with it once you found out." The room was spinning, but it wasn't over. Kevin dropped another bombshell. "Rachel, just tell him the truth. Tell him why you've been doing this." "Why? What could possibly justify this circus?" Rachel sighed and smirked at me. "Fine. You really want to know? I was bored. Bored of you, bored of this house, bored of this life. And you're so goddamn predictable, Mike. I needed some excitement. Kevin here? He's exciting. And so is Mitch. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mysterious." I stared at her, feeling my blood boil. "So that's it? You destroy our marriage because you're bored?" "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she said, waving me off. "We had a good run. But let's be honest. You were never going to keep me interested forever." And just like that, something in me snapped. I wasn't going to let her turn this into a pity party for herself. "You're right, Rachel," I said, my voice cold. I am predictable. And here's what's gonna happen next. You're gonna pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight. Her face faltered for the first time. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious. And don't worry. I'll be filing for divorce first thing tomorrow. You can have all the excitement you want, but it won't be at my expense anymore. As she started sputtering excuses, I turned to Kevin. You might want to leave before I decide to take this outside. He didn't need to be told twice. But as he bolted, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Rachel had lied about so much already. What else was she hiding? Rachel didn't leave quietly. Oh no, she made sure to leave a trail of destruction on her way out. That night, after Kevin scurried off and I stood my ground, she stormed around the house grabbing things, shouting the whole time about how I'd regret this, how I'd never find someone like her again. Trust me, Rachel, I'm counting on that. I shot back, feeling a strange mix of rage and relief. She packed a bag, but before walking out the door, she stopped and gave me this cold, smug smile. You think you've won, don't you? You have no idea what's coming, Mike. Her words chilled me. What was she planning? The next morning, true to my word, I called a lawyer first thing in the morning. I explained the situation, and the lawyer, Mrs. Patel, was surprisingly sympathetic. You'd be amazed how often cases like this end up more complicated than they seem, she said. Do you have proof of her infidelity? I have messages, I replied, and I caught her sneaking into the neighbor's house. Good, she said. Start gathering anything else you can. If she retaliates, which she likely will, you'll need all the leverage you can get. That advice turned out to be prophetic. Later that day, I got a call from my boss. Apparently, Rachel had emailed my company with a wild accusation that I was embezzling money from work. The sheer audacity of it. Thankfully, my boss, Dan, has known me for years. Mike, this doesn't sound like you, he said, but we'll have to look into it. I was furious. She was trying to destroy me, not just personally but professionally. That smug smile she gave me the night before suddenly made sense. This was her revenge. Digging deeper, I decided to fight fire with fire. If Rachel was going to play dirty, I'd find out every skeleton in her closet. I went through old credit card statements, emails, anything I could get my hands on. And oh boy, did I find some dirt. There were charges for fancy dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, jewelry I'd never seen her wear, and even a hotel stay in the next town over. On a night she told me she was at a friend's book club. But the most damning discovery came when I stumbled upon an email exchange with Mr. Mysterious, aka Mitch. Mitch, is the plan still on for the inheritance? You think he'll buy it? Rachel, of course he will. Mike's as gullible as they come. Once the divorce is finalized, I'll make sure he doesn't suspect a thing. Inheritance? What inheritance? My parents aren't exactly wealthy, so what could she be talking about? That's when it hit me, my grandmother. She passed away 2 years ago and left me a decent sum of money. I hadn't touched most of it, keeping it for emergencies. Was Rachel planning to get her hands on that through the divorce? Confrontation 2.0. I couldn't sit on this. I texted Rachel and told her we needed to talk. Surprisingly, she agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. When she walked in, she looked as composed as ever, like nothing was wrong. What's this about, Mike? She asked, sitting down across from me. I didn't waste any time. You're not getting a penny of my inheritance, I said, sliding my phone across the table with the email exchange pulled up. Her face didn't even flinch. Instead, she smirked. I was wondering when you'd find that. So it's true, I demanded, my voice rising. This whole thing, Kevin, Mitch, the lies, was about money? Partly, she admitted, stirring her coffee like we were discussing the weather. But let's be real, Mike. You've been a bore for years. I was planning to leave you anyway. The inheritance just sweetened the deal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're unbelievable, I said, shaking my head. Oh, grow up, Mike, she said, leaning back in her chair. This is how the world works. People look out for themselves. Maybe it's time you start doing the same. The plot thickens. As infuriating as Rachel's nonchalance was, it gave me an idea. If she was willing to admit all of this to my face, who else might she have been bragging to? I hired a private investigator. It felt extreme, but at this point, nothing about Rachel's betrayal seemed too far-fetched. And the PI delivered. Turns out, Rachel wasn't just cheating with Kevin and Mitch. She had a whole network of men she'd been stringing along, including one guy who worked in real estate and another who was a personal trainer. She'd been playing all of them, likely looking for her next exciting chapter. But the real kicker? Mitch wasn't some random fling, he was married. And when the PI approached Mitch's wife with the evidence, she was furious. She contacted me immediately, and we decided to team up. Rachel's world starts to crumble. Between the PI's findings, Mitch's enraged wife, and my lawyer, Rachel's carefully constructed house of cards started to fall apart. Mitch dumped her, Kevin ghosted her, and she was left scrambling. But I wasn't done. I wanted to make sure Rachel couldn't pull this kind of stunt on anyone else. So, I shared the evidence with her family. Her mom called me in tears, apologizing for Rachel's behavior. Her dad? Let's just say he wasn't as forgiving. By the end of the week, Rachel was calling me, begging to talk things through. I let it go to voicemail every time. For once, I was the one holding the cards, and it felt damn good. But this wasn't over yet. There was still one last twist waiting to unfold. Just when I thought the chaos was winding down, the private investigator dropped a bomb. Rachel had been visiting a shady downtown office that specialized in fake identities. She wasn't just planning to leave me. She was planning to disappear. When confronted, Rachel spun some nonsense about exploring options. But by then, her lies were as transparent as glass. Between the hidden bank account, the affairs, and her attempt to vanish, the court had seen enough. I got the house, most of our assets, and my freedom. Rachel? She walked away with the scraps. She showed up at my door one last time, mascara smudged and desperate. "Mike, we can fix this," she pleaded. "No, Rachel," I said. "You've already fixed it. You're out of my life." And just like that, I shut the door on the past, and her, for good. A week after the divorce was finalized, I thought I'd seen the last of Rachel. But true to form, she couldn't resist one final play. I got a text from an unknown number. "Mike, we need to talk. I made a mistake. Meet me at Kevin's old place tonight. It's important." Against my better judgment, curiosity got the better of me. I showed up, half expecting an ambush. But when I got there, the house was empty, except for Rachel, sitting in the dimly lit living room with a glass of wine. "I wanted to apologize," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "I messed up, Mike. I ruined everything." For a split second, I almost believed her. Then I saw the second wine glass on the table and heard movement in the hallway. "Are you kidding me?" I said as Mitch stepped out, looking sheepish. Rachel sighed dramatically, like I was the one inconveniencing her. "We thought maybe you'd want to talk things through together." I laughed, an actual uncontrollable laugh. "You two deserve each other," I said, walking out without another word. Turns out Rachel wasn't apologizing. She was fishing for sympathy, and probably another shot at my wallet. Too bad for her, I was done playing her games. After Rachel's ridiculous attempt to apologize at Kevin's place, I thought her antics couldn't possibly get any worse. Oh, how wrong I was. 2 days later, I got a call from my lawyer, Mrs. Patel. "Mike, there's been a development," she said cautiously. "Rachel has filed a lawsuit against you." "A lawsuit? For what?" I asked, stunned. "She's claiming emotional distress and defamation," Mrs. Patel said. "Apparently, she believes you've been spreading false rumors about her affairs." I almost dropped the phone. False rumors? She doesn't even bother denying them anymore. "Don't worry," Mrs. Patel reassured me. "We have more than enough evidence to fight this. But it's clear she's trying to bleed you dry with legal fees. We need to be strategic." Couldn't believe it. Rachel was trying to flip the narrative and paint herself as the victim. It was infuriating, but at the same time it gave me an idea. Taking the offensive. If Rachel wanted a legal battle, I'd give her one. I handed over every piece of evidence I had, the texts, the emails, the hidden bank account, and even the PI's report about her fake identity scheme. Mrs. Patel put together a counterclaim for fraud and financial misconduct, which Rachel clearly hadn't anticipated. But the real game-changer came when Mitch's wife, Laura, reached out to me. She was still furious about Rachel and Mitch's affair and eager to help. "I've got something you'll want to see," Laura said, sending me a video. It was security camera footage from their home, clear as day, showing Rachel sneaking in and out of their house late at night. But what really sealed the deal was the audio. Rachel's voice was unmistakable, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate Mitch and Kevin. "I've got them eating out of my hand," she bragged in the recording. "And Mike? He's too much of a fool to even see it coming." The courtroom drama. When the court date arrived, Rachel strutted in like she owned the place, wearing her trademark smug expression. But as the evidence was presented piece by piece, that confidence started to crack. The hidden bank account, the fake identity plans, the affairs, and finally, Laura's damning video. By the time the audio played, Rachel's face was beet red. She tried to object, claiming it was taken out of context. But the judge wasn't buying it. Mitch's wife also took the stand, revealing how Rachel had not only lied to her husband, but had attempted to pit him against me to gain more control. Laura's testimony was passionate, and by the end, even the courtroom spectators were glaring at Rachel. When it was Rachel's turn to speak, she doubled down on her victim act. "Mike is trying to ruin my life," she whined. "I was just looking for happiness. Is that a crime?" The judge's response was swift and cutting. "Happiness is not a crime, Mrs. Thompson, but fraud and deceit certainly are." The court ruled in my favor, dismissing Rachel's lawsuit and ordering her to pay a hefty fine for her financial misconduct. She left the courtroom visibly shaken, her once flawless image now in tatters. The aftermath. The legal victory was satisfying, but what came next was even better. Word of the court proceedings spread quickly, and Rachel's reputation took a nosedive. Friends she'd used and manipulated over the years started cutting ties. Kevin sold his house and moved away, and Mitch's wife filed for full custody of their kids. Rachel, she ended up renting a tiny apartment on the edge of town, working a dead-end job. Every now and then, I'd hear whispers about how she was struggling to make ends meet, but honestly, I didn't care. She'd made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. As for me, life finally started looking up. The divorce settlement left me in a good place financially, and with Rachel out of the picture, I could breathe again. I even started dating, not seriously, but enough to remind myself that not all women are manipulative liars. But the real victory was the peace of mind. Rachel's chaos had consumed my life for far too long, and now, for the first time in years, I was free. If you told me a year ago that I'd be standing here, stronger and happier, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I am. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that sometimes losing someone is the best thing that can happen to you. I thought Rachel was finally out of my life for good, but as it turns out, her chaos had one last twist in store. A few months after the courtroom drama, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mike." Rachel's voice came through, quiet and shaky. "I need to talk to you." My first instinct was to hang up, but something about her tone stopped me. She sounded different. Not angry or manipulative, just defeated. "Rachel, I don't know what you want from me," I said, keeping my voice firm. I need to explain," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, can we meet? Just once. After that, I swear you'll never hear from me again." I wrestled with the decision. Part of me wanted to slam the door on whatever game she was playing now, but another part of me was curious. I wanted to know what she could possibly say after everything she'd done. We met at a diner, a neutral, public place where I felt safe. When she walked in, she looked nothing like the confident, manipulative woman I'd known. She was thinner, her makeup hastily applied, and her clothes wrinkled like she'd grabbed them off the floor. "Thanks for coming," she said, sitting across from me. "I'm not here to forgive you, I said flatly. She nodded, fiddling with the corner of a napkin. I know. I don't expect you to. Rachel took a deep breath and started talking. She told me about her childhood, how her parents' marriage was a disaster, and how she'd grown up believing love was a transaction. A game where you win by taking as much as you can before the other person takes it from you. Not an excuse, she said quickly, noticing my skeptical look. Just context. Then she dropped the bombshell. I'm sick, Mike, she said, her voice trembling. I found out a few weeks ago. It's cancer.
Ist daher, stumped?
You expect me to believe that? After everything. She pulled out a crumpled envelope and slid it across the table. Inside was a medical report. It looked legitimate. I didn't tell you to get sympathy, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized how much I hurt you, how much I hurt everyone. I don't want to leave this world without at least trying to make amends. For the first time in years, Rachel seemed genuinely vulnerable. It threw me off balance, and I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know that. I left the diner without promising anything, my mind racing. Was this another manipulation, or was she finally being honest? Moving forward, Rachel's confession stirred up a whirlwind of emotions I wasn't ready for. Anger, pity, confusion. In the end, I decided not to dwell on it. Whether her apology was genuine or not, it didn't change the past. But for the first time, I felt a strange sense of closure. Life kept moving, and so did I. I started volunteering at a local animal shelter, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I met new people, focused on my hobbies, and slowly began to feel like myself again. Rachel's call wasn't the ending I expected, but it was an ending nonetheless. And in its own messy way, it helped me close the door on that chapter of my life. Months passed, and Rachel's confession slowly faded into the background. I focused on rebuilding my life, staying busy with work, volunteering, and spending time with Max, my golden retriever. I'd even started casually dating a woman named Sarah, someone kind and refreshingly uncomplicated. Then, out of nowhere, Rachel reappeared. I was at the grocery store one evening when I spotted her in the checkout line. She was thinner than before, her hair covered with a scarf. Despite everything, my chest tightened. I tried to slip away before she saw me, but no such luck. Mike, she called out, her voice weak but steady. I turned reluctantly. Rachel. She smiled faintly, clutching a small basket of groceries. Can we talk? Against my better judgment, I nodded, and we stepped outside. She updated me on her condition. Her treatment was grueling, and her prognosis wasn't great. But what struck me was how different she seemed. The arrogance, the manipulation, it was all gone. For the first time, Rachel seemed human. I know I don't deserve this, she said, looking down. But I wanted to thank you for hearing me out that day. It helped more than you know. I didn't know what to say. Part of me still felt anger and resentment, but another part, a quieter part, felt a flicker of compassion. I'm glad you're trying to make things right, I said carefully. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I know it's too late to fix anything between us, but I'm working on myself. I just hope. Maybe one day you'll remember me as something more than the worst parts of me. I left that encounter feeling conflicted. Rachel had hurt me in ways I never thought I could recover from, but seeing her so vulnerable made it hard to hold on to my anger. A turn for the better. A few weeks later, I got a surprising message. Rachel's mother had reached out to me. She's been talking about you, her mother said. She said you were the only one who really stood up to her. I think it's helping her see things differently. Thank you, Mike. It wasn't what I expected to hear, but it brought me a strange sense of peace. For all her faults, Rachel was finally facing the consequences of her actions. And maybe, just maybe, she was becoming a better person because of it. Moving on. I continued to move forward with my life, growing closer to Sarah and finding joy in the simple things. I didn't dwell on Rachel's past or her future, but every now and then, I'd think about her, about what we'd been through, and how even the most broken people can find a way to grow. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in a perfect bow. Sometimes it's messy, uncomfortable, and complicated, but it's still closure. And that's enough. It's been over a year since I last saw Rachel at the grocery store. I haven't heard from her since, and I don't expect to. Maybe she's moved on, or maybe her illness finally caught up with her. I'll never know, and I've made peace with that. In the meantime, my life has taken a much brighter turn. Sarah and I have grown closer, and what started as casual dating has turned into something real. She's everything Rachel wasn't. Kind, honest, and genuine. Being with her feels easy, like breathing, and I didn't realize how much I needed that until now. One day, Sarah and I were walking Max at the park when she turned to me, smiling. "You seem lighter these days," she said. I thought about it for a moment before nodding. "I think I've finally let go of all the weight I was carrying. It feels good." We walked in silence for a while, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. The past was where it belonged, behind me. Reflection. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far I've come. Rachel's betrayal broke me in ways I didn't think I could recover from. But in the end, it also taught me some of the most important lessons of my life. I learned to trust my instincts, to value myself, and to never ignore red flags. I learned that it's okay to let go of people who hurt you, no matter how much history you share. And most importantly, I learned that real love doesn't come with conditions or manipulations. It's honest, patient, and kind. If there's one thing I'd want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Don't be afraid to start over. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. As for me, I'm finally happy. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about what the future holds. Thank you for staying with me. This crazy journey is finally over, and I'm ready for what's next. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more interesting stories. And leave a comment with what you would do in this situation. See you in the next videos.